Good morning, everybody. Trying to keep that glare off the back of behind my head. This KB5 MIQ big boy. Thought we'd talk a little bit on this old cold, snowy northeast Texas day. I was talking with W5DLX, WD5HKV the other night about the subject for the next video, and thought HKV suggested talk about the RF output power, difference levels of it, and rules for it, and a few ideas on that. So we're going to talk a little bit about that today. I'm going to read you this off ARRL website. U.S. amateur transmitter power limits. At all times, transmitter power must be the minimum necessary to carry out desired communications unless otherwise noted. Maximum output power is 1500 watts PEP. Novice and technicians are limited to 200 watts PEP on HF bands. Geographical power restrictions apply to 630 meter, 70 meter, 33 centimeter, and 23 centimeter bands. I'm not going to talk about some of those, but something to think about this. PEP power is how a single sideband transmits. You can have your radio in upper sideband or lower sideband, key the mic, nothing happens. If you notice, even if you got your meter set for power or modulation, when you talk, your needle jumps back and forth because it's transmitting on your voice peaks. So more than likely, and somebody may come in, one of the experts may tell me I'm wrong on this, but you're probably not getting a full 100 watts out on PEP power, depending on how your voice carries, what your mic gain is, etc. You probably get 75, 80 watts out, in all honesty. And you may be peaking the full 100. It just depends on your radio and how you got everything set up. But the minimum amount required. Now, I'm bad about this. Done it ever since I've been a ham. I got a 100-watt radio. I leave it set. I don't change it. It's a 100-watt radio. Now, DLX predominantly operates off batteries. So he's been showing us a few things on operating on lower power. And matter of fact, this past Friday night, we was having a little discussion, and he was operating at 40 watts on a dipole, and I was operating at 100 watts on my 2-element beam. And we had a guy from Florida check in with us, which was great. We love to have people check in with us on their nightly roundtable. And he could hear both of us. Of course, I was louder than DLX was, but he was operating 40 watts off battery on a dipole and making the desired communications come out. So this is something to think about. Now, I gotta look something up here in just a minute. I'll get to that. But I'll give you an example of how radios transmit. This is the specs for my FT897D Yaesu HF radio. RF output power, sideband, CW, and FM. 160 to 6 meters, mine puts out 100 watts. AM carrier is 25 watts. So you're only putting out 25 watts on AM. 2 meter band, or VHF, 50 watts. AM carrier, 12.5 watts. 440, 20 watts. On sideband, CW, and FM, AM carrier, 5 watts. So, what that's telling you, now remember, on CW, when you key that transmitter, you're getting full max output power of that radio. So you better make sure your antennas and everything is tuned right, because I can speak from personal experience. Young ham on an old ICOM 701, and I didn't understand. It wasn't real clear, and I never did get it down right till after this happened on how to read my SWR meter to set it for SWR. I thought I was reading it right. Somebody had given me a Mosley T33 Junior Tribander, and I had it up. To this day, don't know why I put it up. I was a novice. It's still what I couldn't use it on 15 and 20. I had a perfectly good 3-element 10-meter beam up that I took down, let another guy have. Don't know why I put it up. But sideband never had no problem with it. And I was on radio a lot back then. But HKV and I decided to start working on my CW then. The first night I tried to start transmitting CW, I burnt finals out in that radio. Come to find out, the traps were burned up, were shorted in that antenna. It wasn't showing a high SWR, and that's the difference in PEP power versus full key down power. I was probably not transmitting that long. Voice peaks would go up, come down, the power would go up and down. And I remember the fan coming on once or twice, but not because I just thought I was getting long-winded. But when I went to doing key down with CW, full 100 watts, it didn't last long. So remember that when you're in a key down mode or FM mode, it's putting out max power. Okay? Now, do you need an amp? Well, that's personal preference. Personally, I've had one, but I had it when I was a novice and couldn't use it and told them why I traded for it. Ended up selling it. But my personal preference has always been that if I had the money to spend on an amp, I would rather spend it on antenna height, and a better feed line and stay barefoot. That's my personal preference. Now, on HF bands, especially 20 meters and 160, I found this out on 160. A lot of guys running power on there. And if you try to work a DX contact, that's where you could run into a problem being heard. Not saying anything bad about anybody running an amp. If you want to run one, that's great. I just have never, like I said, I've done this hobby on a budget my whole life, and I've never wanted to put an amp up. Now, one other thing, my other radio is an older Kenwood TM261A, just straight 2 meter FM radio. It puts out on high power 50 watts, medium 10 watts, and low 5 watts. And I use it strictly just in the shack. Now, do you need an amp on 2 meter FM when all you're doing is working local repeaters? In my opinion, no. Now, I have seen a time where I had a little 5 watt talkie that I was using for my home base 2 meter radio, and I bought a little 25 watt amp and put on it. I didn't hear nothing. But if you got a 50 watt radio and you're working local repeaters, I don't think I would want to try to run an amp on that. That's just my personal preference. I'm going to look up something else right quick we was going to talk about. Okay, I'm looking up QRP power limits because I'm not that familiar with QRP power. QRP operation is a specialized guy running a station. It was first popularized in the early 20s. QRP operators generally limit their RF output power to 5 watts or less for CW and 10 watts or less for single sideband. Now, a lot of stations like to work QRP stations. They really do, because it's a good way to get a good contact if you're IDing QRP. There's lots of QRP radios, kit building radios out there you can get. MFJ's got them. Just look up any ham radio supplier and look up QRP radio kits. They're fairly inexpensive. Good way to build one. I'm actually considering trying to build one myself here one day. But when you get on radio, listen for the contacts, and you can understand. You can tell pretty well who's hearing an amp, who's running an amp. The way I tell, if they're super loud, or they got a really deep sounding to their voice, like the guy from Florida that was running, I think 600-700 watts. He was only an S9 on me, which Cody was about an S7, S8 on me. But his voice sounded so much louder. So that's one way to tell if somebody's running an amp. This, like I said, I do these videos mainly centered for new hams and ham radio on a budget. You see lots of people asking about power requirements and things like that now. Don't get hung up on power requirements. Now, novice technicians, you're only limited to 200 watts PEP on the low bands. Remember that. It's not legal for you to run an amp. So, now this is just my personal observations. In a 10-meter band from 28.3 to 28.5 is the novice section of the volt for the foam portion. I've made 99% of my 10-meter contacts in that section, and very rarely do I hear anybody running an amp, even if they've got a general class license or higher. 17 meters, I hear some amps in there, but a lot of guys running barefoot. 20 meters, you better get ready. There's going to be a lot of people on there running amplifiers. The 20 meters, when I first got into this hobby, was the band that you really strove to get your general class license so you could get on to. It's a good band. I've made contacts there. It's just not one of my favorite bands to work. I prefer 10 meters to 17. On a different note, when you're setting your station up, your shacks up, get you a couple of binders. You're gonna accumulate all kinds of manuals over the years of messing with this hobby. And if you're like me, you've lost them. I've lost a couple of mine. I had to reprint all of them. Now, put them in a binder. That way you'll always have them handy to use. And I refer to mine all the time on radios. And I can't remember all these menu settings on mine because I don't use that much of the features on the radio I got. All right, I hope this helps answer a few questions on RF output. If anybody got any questions, please shoot me an email. KB5MIQ is my call sign. My email's listed on my QRZ page. Please put your call sign in the subject line of the email so I'll be sure and notice it. Appreciate everybody who subscribed to the channel. I hit 163 subscribers. Still working at this station new. I got W5DLX, WD5HKV helping me out with ideas because we all doing everything we do to support this hobby. Hope everybody has a great week. Stay safe, and this cold weather is hitting most of the country. It's KB5MIQ Big Boy 73.